Bienvenue à tous, merci de votre participation. Pour écouter notre session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet Interprétation et sélectionner le drapeau français. Merci.
On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the African Centre for Cities, Our Future Cities, Surge Africa, and the Red Cross Crescent Climate Centre, we are delighted to welcome you to the Rise Africa 2024 Action Festival. Rise Africa is a platform that brings together thinkers, doers, and enablers to inspire action for sustainable cities. This is our 4th edition of our Rise Africa Action Festival, which brings together insights, practices, and visions from across the continent under this year's theme of Solutions Only, Failures Also. This year's theme provokes us to change the way we view our cities and approach their development, particularly to promote a solutions orientation to our worldview. The festival invites you to embrace different ways of knowing, to seek ways to bridge science, policy, business, and arts in creative ways. It invites you to forge new partnerships, experiment with new concepts and ideas, and drive change in your homes and communities. This year's festival, we are running a social media storm to share how urbanization is happening in Africa, that cities can be centers of possibility, and how we can inspire action for sustainable African cities. Please share these for the days of the festival, including Africa Day, the 25th of May. As is tradition, we invite you to enter this session in a spirit of creativity.
Niaje. My name is Ngatia. This is Timothy Erinaitwe. We are from Nairobi, Kenya. The poem we're about to do is called Ululation. A toast to everyone refueling our reservoirs of joy, choosing to see continuity where endings were declared. Those locking arms in the face of destitution, embracing hope with easy smiles, saying we will see this through and together. Glasses in the air for the weavers amongst us, threading care into tattered social fabric, from locality to neighborhood to area, all bound together by this magic of community, those rubbing the idea of family like balm into unfamiliar bonds. A dedication to all the dreamers, adding color to the mosaic of our present, birthing new patterns into the spaces where old techniques ran out of steam. Those rebuilding, rethinking, reloving, reusing, redesigning, rebecoming, and sketching out fresh layers onto cities that were handed to us. May our trail inspire passion in those that follow our footsteps. Asante sana.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fourth edition of the Rise Africa 2024 Action Festival. I am utterly delighted to be sharing our ideas for the whole festival, given so generously from people across the continent who share our excitement about this platform. I have the unenviable task of helping us to position ourselves on this 4-year journey so far, and to help contextualize the whole festival before we dive into the content of today, which I'm really excited to share. So to start us off, our session takes the namesake from our overall theme, Solutions Only, Re-embedding Imagination into Everyday Practice. And we are joined by a set of fabulous provocateurs and colleagues who are here to share their efforts at many scales to make African cities more dignified, efficient, exciting places to live. So to start with, we must offer special thanks to our partners in delivering the Rise Africa festivals. This is the African Center for Cities, Our Future Cities, the Red Cross Crescent Climate Center, Surge Africa, the Nature of Cities, and of course, many colleagues in ICLEI Africa who've added their insights and support here. The journey thus far and where you're joining us now has come through a series of iterations. Our first festival in 2021 called for our next urban champions and shared the everyday work that people are doing to drive sustainability in each of their cities. In 2022, we hosted the session under the banner of creativity, agency, urgency, acknowledging the tension between the need for creative and participatory approaches, but also acknowledging the urgency of the climate crisis, the urbanization trends that we're seeing, which are ever more present. And from this, birth some fabulous reflections, particularly one from Bayo Akomolafe, said, "Times are urgent, we must slow down." And this led us into our next iteration of the cities we want from last year, where we were provoked further by these questions are, who are we to want? Who are we to deserve? And really grappling with the question of the processes that we engage in as we try to put forward and actualize the visions we have for our cities. And you're now joining us in our iteration on solutions only, failures also, which has come out of a provocation from last year, which was this energy from the whole of the last year's festival that we keep starting. We are stuck starting with the idea of the problem that then gets a solution. And even while putting this theme forward, we realized how normative that position is. Even if we feel that we are solutions oriented, it is always about problem identification, proper analysis of this as our first steps before we start engaging a solution. And of course, those are important processes, but it shows how much our starting point in the worldview around African urbanism is around problematizing and starting from that point. So what if we started from solutions? What if we put solutions in front of us? And as our provocateurs from last year said, if we put more solutions in front of us, we will become solutions oriented. And that's not to step away from the point that we are also trying to learn from these processes and capture these learnings. And the idea of the failures also has come from an adage from a number of people that wouldn't it be great to have a conference of failures and to share what didn't work abjectly and to offer that as guidance for those who are trying to walk a similar journey. So this is not the conference of failures. This is the conference of, as imperfect as solutions is as a word, solutions. But we are hosting a conversation or a set of conversations across the festival to think critically about our relationship with failure. And I get to run our session today on solutions and hand the lucky task over to deepening the conversation around failure to our colleague Fumi, who will lead that conversation in tomorrow's morning session. So I do invite you to register for that and continue this journey before Vida, our divine Rise Africa community liaison and festival curator, leads us in a session on Friday that reflects on the wealth of ideas brought forward and talks about reflection as this practice that we are all attempting to follow. So who are we in this community or group of people brought together in this festival? Please invite you to introduce yourselves in chat, your name, organization, hobby, star sign, whatever you would like to offer forward, and that'll help position who's joined us today. I'm lucky to have a nice overview of who's come to the festival. And so I put that together for us to digest together if you would like to understand who are your peers in the registrations. We are about 800 or so individuals Many have registered for a number of sessions. We have this really fabulous balance of organizational affiliations from civil society, NGOs, community organizations, research, academia, as our main groups who come to these engagements, and then about 14% private sector and business, and about 18% government. Really nice to see that the government contingent who's joined us has grown. And then many independent artists, media, philanthropies, funders, and a number of multilateral or international organizations. We have a relatively even gender split. And the age group who are most provoked are the 25s to 35s. So I hope that we've cultivated a Rise Africa space in which all feel welcome. And we do remind everyone that this is a space absolutely for disagreeing about ideas, for challenging each other on ideas and practices, but certainly not a space where we tolerate disagreements with personhood and identity. Where we come from, who are we in terms of geography? There are about 230 different cities captured in registrations. The familiar names here: Cape Town, Nairobi, Lusaka, Lagos, Addis, Windhoek, Johannesburg, Dar es Salaam, Stellenbosch, Manchester, Los Angeles, Kilimani, Ibadan, London, Maputo, Kisumu. It really excites me and many others by the wealth of perspectives who come into our Rise Africa sessions. And at the core, this was the first framing of Rise from 2020 that was put forward. We want to bring together thinkers, doers, and enablers. And it is not to suggest that you are only one of these things by any means, but to put forward the idea that we need to be thoughtful, we need to be action-oriented, and we need to enable. And there are many roles, as we understand, in shaping cities that we want, in shaping cities that deliver on sustainability and equity for their people. And we do so through immense creativity. We are hungry for creative expression, for using creativity as a way to express deep ideas and say things that words do not do justice to. We invite you to visit this year's iteration of the Rise Africa photo competition. The shortlist is up and available. And this is just 3 examples of submissions. And if you're photography as a boundary object or a lens through which to understand urban development, then I invite you to visit our session on capturing the everyday possibilities of our cities. So why are we here? What brings you to Rise Africa? And here, one of my favorite tools used by Eddie Jemba, a longtime Rise colleague, is a Zoom storm. So I invite you to take a moment to put into the chat, what has brought you to this festival? What are you excited for? Don't send it just yet, but type it in, take 30 seconds, and then we'll say go. And the Zoom storm will show us a whole bunch of answers. So I'll type in. So typing it in, let's give another 15 seconds. All right. And perhaps when I say go, we click and submit. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Solutions, learning innovative ways of African urbanism, curiosity, Black Soldier Fly solutions, inspiration, creative action, to be part of something that inspires me, to learn and connect, to learn, curiosity and hope. Absolutely, these are things that inspire all of us in the team. So these are what I think of when I think of this community of thinkers, doers, and enablers. As you theory, and this is all narrative work. This is all about shaping how we speak about our cities, how we encourage others, and how we offer space to people to share and to learn. And so in this narrative, we've put three main things that have brought our team together and that we're trying to push, which is Africa's future is urban. Our settlements are urbanizing, and we need to get people on board with that fact so that we can shape policy around that, so that we can shape actions around that understanding, as opposed to trying to fight it. Cities are concentrators of ideas, community, resources, and possibility. They offer us a lot if we are able to understand and invite that offering. And cities are where the arena for our efforts for sustainability and equity will be enacted or not. The battle for sustainability will be lost or won in cities, given their nature. So these are the three arguments we put forward through Rise Africa, and many of you have added to these points. We have amassed, again, a generous offering of perspectives, ideas. This is our 2022 Festivals board. There's a similar one being put together from the conversation in this session. There's a huge amount of information available through the offerings of people who come here. And we need to make sure that we are getting this into the mainstream. And again, it is based around people and people's offering of their time and interest to drive this forward. So one big ask that we have of all of you is Africa Day takes place on Saturday. We are not going to be running our festival sessions and asking people to sit on Zooms on a weekend, but we do want to try an Africa Day social media storm. So from the wealth of ideas, we have taken quotes from across sessions across the 4 years of Rise and put them into a set of cards that you can use to share some of these arguments. So Kevin has thrown into the chat the link to the social media toolkit. If you are social media inclined, please be welcome to take any of these posts and add your voice to it and use the hashtags Rise Africa, Africa Day, and Urban Possibilities. And we're hoping that these ideas get out and excite people about the potential and possibilities of cities. If you are not keen on the ones that we've made, please make your own. Add your own voice, your own perspective, images of your cities, and be welcome to share those. All of this is shared through our Instagram platform. If you have not yet followed us, maybe you could be our 10,000th follower. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We are amazed at how many people engage with the media here. And again, it puts an important point that media and creativity are important ways to spread these messages. So please do join our Instagram and share an Africa Day message. So I feel like I've run a verbal marathon. So let us arrive back at our festival now. Solutions only, failures also. We have a whole set of brilliant sessions that have been put through. I hope that our discussion today inspires you to continue into our following morning sessions. Please do take the time to look through this program and register for further sessions that interest you. They cross the gamut of voice, equity, community engagement and process, nature-based solutions, waste management, food markets, innovation for food systems, and then various really interesting ideas around education and educational process, futuring methodologies, human-centered design, and how we use these ideas in our advocacy, both locally and globally. So please do honor the submissions by many different organizations and individuals and take some time to join their sessions. So I am blessed to be leading a conversation with an amazing panel, and we thought that the most appropriate way to organize a solutions-only session would be to share some pitches, some short provocations of some efforts that are going on around in different cities across the continent. So we're joined by colleagues who run businesses or are driving innovations or working in cities who have all attempted to put forward some solutions of their own. So we have Tuilika Nailoke, Shaimemania, I promise never to trip over names, founder of the myriad design studio, Radwa Rostom, founder and CEO of Handover, Ben Collenberg, the director of the urban think tank Empower, Mohammed Ashraf Abdel Samad, Synergist social entrepreneur and the founder of Shagara at School, and then Wahaba Kindred Beogo from Ouagadougou, the head of Ouagadougou Town Hall. So I'd like to invite them all to bring on their cameras and join us in the discussion. Once they have presented their efforts, we will invite Itiboho Makele, the program manager of Sustainable and Resilient Cities in the South African Cities Network, and Gertrude Rose Gamwera, the Secretary General of the East African Local Government Association, to offer reflections on what they've heard and try to do some collective sense making around what this means for how we understand our cities. So to start us off, we found it really important to understand why it's hard to talk about a single sustainable city, and found that so many of the innovations and solutions that we're talking about take place in neighborhood level or community level and often get lost in the broader picture of the city. And so we're back to this familiar question of how do we appreciate these niche innovations and help them to grow and spread. So to start us off, I'd like to invite Radwa to share the work done by Handover. Radwa, if you can share your video, and over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Paul, and thanks for the invitation, and thanks for everyone who's joining. I'm overwhelmed by the number of people attending. It's so good. I'm sure many are from different time zones. It's good that everyone was able to make it. So I'll try to be punctual as much as I can, and please, Paul, just refer to me if I've exceeded the time. But referring to what you've been mentioning, Paul, and the main reason of the festival, I wanted to share my work in Egypt, Handover. So very quickly, my background is civil engineering, mainly construction. I've always been interested in environmental solutions, but couldn't really connect how sustainability can be part of the construction scene. So I've been triggered by a lot of facts related to urbanization and related to our negative impact on the environment. So I sort of felt responsible, being someone who's working in this field, that we need to do something differently. So what we actually do, or who we are at Handover, we are a design and build company. We specialize in delivering cost-effective and environment-friendly building solutions using natural and local building materials. We've registered the company in 2016, and since then we've been adopting the earth construction technique. The main reason, as I said, there were a couple of triggers of why we start this kind of work. Mainly, of course, economical reasons, the rapid increase in the prices of raw materials like cement and steel. Of course, the negative contribution we're responsible for in the construction industry on the environment, and also the lack of the human-centric designs and proper installation and the having the comfort of for the inhabitants in buildings, and as we spend almost 90% of our time inside buildings, so it has to be comfortable. So our main pillars in our work is human-centered design and creating social impact. This was one of our main also goals, is how we can be a private sector company and still have a contribution in our community. Sustainability, not just in the materials, but in the whole aspect of the project we work in. We try to be as sustainable as possible in terms of the design, the material, everything. Knowledge transfer, this was also very important, because when we first started, there were no reliable institutes that can deliver such knowledge. So, for example, I had to travel to India to learn about these techniques. So I felt also responsible to make this knowledge available for everyone. So we always do workshops, we include students. I teach also in some universities here in Egypt to spread this knowledge. And of course, research and development, because these techniques that we're working with, we didn't invent them, they've been there, they're ancient techniques, and we are only reviving them. So we also feel responsible that we have to add more to it and develop it. We work on social projects, we have also commercial projects, and mainly the types of projects we work on are residential, commercial, communal, public spaces, urban development projects. The main techniques we work with is basically earth materials, or like natural materials. So round earth is one of the techniques we highly adopt, compressed earth blocks as well. I'm sure they're familiar in some regions around Africa and also around many continents and not just Africa. So I wouldn't go through it very like technically. It's just basically it's those very simple and raw materials that are found almost everywhere. When we say earth construction, it's not just one or two techniques, there are almost 12 techniques. Some facts are why this is unique or why this is helping the issue we are addressing is because they are durable materials. As I said, they're ancient materials. They've been there for a while. They're not something that require special materials or special equipment. They have a great environmental impact comparing them to the conventional techniques, and you can see the numbers they are promising. Also, in terms of benefits, we were very conscious that we have to provide a solution that is comfortable for the inhabitants. So it provides this kind of benefit. Also, in terms of look and durability, it's something different. It's aesthetically appealing. Rammed earth is basically ramming layers of earth. So that's the final look of it, and you can change the color and play with it. Compressed earth blocks is basically having the same exact materials but compressing them in a machine. I'll just go quickly through some of the projects we have done around Egypt. Paul, just tell me, am I fine with
You're rushing very, very much. I think we're
should I have time? Okay,
we're
good.
devouring these images. They're fabulous. So you're
Okay,
doing
let
great.
me slow down with the project then. So this was our first project. It was our pilot in 2015. We wanted just to know if people would even accept the idea of building with earth. Do people still believe in the possibility of building with natural materials? So we went to a slum, one of the biggest slum areas around Cairo, and we suggested this idea to some of the locals there, and not surprisingly, but people didn't really accept the idea in the beginning. They were very conscious about it. They had a lot of misconceptions about building with earth, whether it puts them in a certain social standard or it's not durable, it will not withstand the rain. So it was a learning curve for us in this project. I always say it might not be the best or the best looking project that we have done, but of course we have learned a lot. We have learned about people's mindset, how they accept new ideas, the misconception they have, and how we can also talk with them, how we can include them in our process, how to include the kids, the women, the men in the design process, and they feel the ownership of it, and we give them the freedom to finish it with how they would be comfortable to do it. Afterwards, we also built a school in one of the suburbs of Cairo in Giza. This was a community school managed by an NGO. We also included the kids in all the processes. It was basically rammed earth with some roofing made out of boats and domes. It was interesting how also the kids perceived their school and how they had ideas of how to make it like playful and fun. And this was another project in a different region that was sort of in a Bedouin community. So we also had some misconceptions about working with different communities. So we allowed ourselves to immerse in their culture. We stayed for 1 week with the villagers just to understand them, understand their culture, and design something that they would be happy to use. This is a medical unit that volunteers run, like volunteer doctors. We used all the materials that we can source from the behind mountains, so in order to lessen the cost and to make it familiar also to the context. We've learned a lot from them, from their building techniques that they use, and we also hired the laborers from the community so we can pass on the knowledge also that we have. And this is part of the learning and the laborers that we work with. This is one of our commercial projects. It's a house in a farm. So also it was very basic, but this is what the client wanted. This is another example of how we can use these materials also in the community context. This is a social housing project. We've used also earth material. It's plastered with mud. All the materials are sourced from places or quarries nearby our project. We've tried to also to include the family members in the design process. We've designed the house around their needs. They wanted a courtyard, they wanted an oven. So this was all based on their needs and their culture as well. This was another project with the Ministry of Environmental Affairs here in Egypt and UNDP. They wanted to build administrative offices around a natural protectorate. So it made perfect sense to use a natural solution instead of using concrete in a natural protectorate. So this was and also some facilities for the visitors. So we tried to add also the natural look, sourcing most of the materials from around the site. This is another example also of building walls out of, again, round earth technique. As you can see, the colors change from one place to the other depending on where we source the materials from. This is another project that's about to be opened. It's a boutique hotel in one of the regions in Upper Egypt. Also, we tried to make it look also as natural as we can, and we tried to preserve the site with all its elements, the natural rocks. We made sure that they are placed as they are, and we worked around them. Also, this is one of the exciting projects we are working on. It hasn't started the construction, but it's a medical unit in one of the poorest villages in Egypt. We wanted also to add this mindset of using natural materials, and also it wouldn't be something very extra for them to grasp. And the last one is in another country in Africa. It's in Niger. This was a collaboration with a design studio in India called Unitary. We wanted to build or the concept was to build an urban project with a mosque and a school and a dormitory. And we wanted to do some invention with our walls and how they have some pattern. So we were working with the materials we have. It hasn't been constructed yet, but we are hopefully this would happen someday. But we are excited that we were able to explore also a country and another context in Africa. This is some of the images of the workshops we have done with the students. We've done even some projects in Jordan and in Tunisia, and here also around Egypt and Nuweiba and Sinai. And this is some of the recognitions we've had. This is sort of like a pat on our back that we're trying to do something. So yeah, we've been blessed to be part of many organizations and many programs that helped us to grow and raise more awareness about the issues we're trying to address. So yeah, that's it. I hope I was able to cover the questions and just give a glimpse of what we're doing and what impact we're trying to achieve. And thank you. Thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Radwa. I mean, the images were just a visual feast for us. So I think you already have a number of people in chat who I'm sure will want to follow up and connect. What I really liked was the framing around the types of buildings, schools, hospitals, spaces that can build aspiration and help that journey. So certainly a question I'd like to explore in our later discussion is this question of cultural fit and how demonstration of this helps people to take on these technologies. Thank you so much. I'd like to turn now to Wahabo from Ouagadougou to share some reflections on the Greenbelt Initiative. If you can unmute and join us.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through well.
I am going to talk about intro part. I'll speak for about 3 minutes and then present my pictures afterwards. Thank you very much. I am Babu. I am in charge of the monitoring of the Greenbelt. In Ouagadougou, when we talk about Greenbelt, it's a project that we have identified which surrounds Ouagadougou. You need to remember that Burkina Faso is a Sahelian country with lots of desert areas and less water areas. In that regard, we wanted to have as an area that we could call a forest area, a green area that would help the city to strengthen its climate since the 70s. The government came up with that project and with a surface area of 1,200. And since the 70s, in August, we have rainy seasons in August. We have lots of these campaigns are organized, but until then, there were no structures to take care of the forest. So we came back in 2015, 2016 to try to rethink this project because this area had become deserted. There was nothing, the populations, people started building houses, and they became parks for vehicles and a lot of things except of the green area. And that was how at the level of the the locality, we came up with the rearrangement of the area. So associations came together to help us to rehabilitate the green belt. So what do? We try to demarcate a surface area and we fence it, and we started working with some associations. There's a bit of, so this association, there's a voice in the background. Can you hear me? There is an interference from one of the delegates.
Please proceed.
So this association, so the association was entrusted with the responsibility. We bought trees from this association, and they're expected to plant these trees and to maintain these trees. And they came up with, they've located women who could work on the site. So those women were digging the trees and they were using them to sell to people who are building. So when at some point they didn't have anything to do, we asked these ladies to come and work on the water areas and to also help to entertain the trees. And that was how in 2016, 2017, today we have about 60 hectares that have been worked on, and we are trying to improve on that. And for each hectare, we have 50 women working on those, and they try to generate income from the various activities. And that has helped us to recoup, to take back this area for a forest area. And that has been able to help us to achieve the aim for which that was created, and to also help the city of Ouagadougou to achieve climate resilience, and to also work on helping our cities, on our city. So this is what we are doing at the level. We have the IMF, we have the European Union and other local partners with whom we're working at the level of the municipality in terms of prospect, because we have many people, about 2,000 persons working on this project. We are trying to come up with a roadmap and a holistic program for everyone, and that will help us to elaborate a climate project for the city of Ouagadougou. So this is basically the aspects that we have worked on. If you permit, I'm going to present some pictures of what we have achieved so far. Are we okay with that?
Yes, please share.
So you can see, we can see the trees here. We have here, these are women who are supposed to come up with some products. These are some farms. This is what they are doing. That is, here we have some solar panels that you can see there. You can see all of that will be distributed to women. And those are farms that are being demarcated. You can see this area was just that way. And that is what we are working on, to be able to take back the area. So at the end of the day, it is these women who have worked. This is where they work. These areas that have already been rehabilitated. You can see them planting some salads. We ensure that everything that is being done is herbicide, everything is fabricated, is manufactured by those women. So at some point, we have some economic gains. So they do not even need to transport this product to the market. People come to the ground to get them. We have a combination here. We have trees and we have farms for women and for workers. These trees, the trees that you can see at the local level, call it burumburu, people come and they purchase them. You can notice here that we have some storage basins, and before we used to have some drilling, some boreholes, but now we have them, and then we can see women who are all working their various farms, working. So today, this is what we have in the various surface areas, and we want to continue working on this to ensure that we achieve resilience in our city. We can see a woman who is we see a woman, all these women, they work to ensure that they help their families with the fallout, the economic benefit. So at the level of the municipality, we no longer have unoccupied space. So this area was abandoned, but now we are trying to turn them into water storage areas. So we are now working hand in hand with these women who are working on those sites. This is a brief summary of what I wanted to share with you on the rehabilitation of the green belt of Ouagadougou. I hope I've been able to give you what is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wahabo. That's fabulous. Really nice to see the work, and here, going in as a social innovation with women as the main beneficiaries and workers in the green belt. I can see connections to food systems, to nature-based solutions, and then, as you say at the end, the water storage opportunities. And so this, hopefully building this reinforcing process by which the greenery can expand and add value to the city of Ouagadougou and its people. So thank you very much for sharing. I'd like to invite Ben. Thank you. To now share some reflections from the Empower Shack initiative and some of the work that you're doing there.
Perfect. Just checking that you can hear me and see my screen.
All coming through well.
Brilliant. Well, first of all, thank you, Paul and the RISE team, for having me. My name is Ben Collenberg from Urban Think Tank Empower. I'm going to talk a little bit about our action-based approach. I'm very grateful to be included in the solutions presentation, but I think the failures presentation is almost as important. I think part of our approach is trialing and pilot projects and testing ideas, and often the failures are part of that. And I think the reason we do this, the prototyping approach, is to challenge what are often unconscious prejudices that, in order to come up with new solutions. So today I'll be providing a brief introduction to the Empower Housing, where we first and foremost challenge the view of informality as the South African housing problem, but rather acknowledge it as an agile housing solution for over 7 million South Africans. Even though there's a very big number, we still can't forget the actual individuals who live in these homes And to start off, pictured here is Pumezo Tsibanto, a prominent community leader whose vision and input was vital in conceptualizing our Empower Upgrade model. Starting in Khayelitsha in Cape Town, in Pumezo's community of BT Soweto in South Sea, we began our first project where we acknowledge and take inspiration from the existing.
Sorry, Ben, one sec. I think interpretation, I just need to reactivate.
Oh,
Hold on.
yes, please.
Sure.
Yes, please, as it didn't begin. Okay, it's okay now?
Hold on, Casimir, one sec.
Okay.
Okay, sorted. Please go ahead, Ben.
Perfect. So in this image on screen is an existing community in Khayelitsha in South Sea. It's been the residents have been living here since 1986. And as we start, as we begin our project, we acknowledge and take inspiration from the existing informal solutions to formally develop the occupied sites. For an existing community living on those sites, first of all, strengthening existing social networks, but also avoiding any forms of displacement, decanting, or relocations of residents in the process. So we build the new structures through a series of phases to incorporate the community in the process and not have to relocate elsewhere, to keep the community intact through the process. Designed from the bottom up as well. I mean, the locations of the residents within the site aren't by chance. There's an intricate network of the community, and while we design from the bottom up, at the same time we design from the top down through the city legal infrastructures to ultimately provide the residents with the freehold title deed, or in future projects, alternative formal tenure, depending on the project. So ultimately, our solutions or innovations that we're discussing is to work with the existing community. It doesn't sound so revolutionary, but ultimately building trust to collaboratively workshop solutions together. And while we're doing that, we can address multiple challenges at the same time. Some of them are access to dignified housing, land shortages in cities, alternative affordable housing solutions and prototypes, and then, of course, renewable energy provisions and sustainable management practices for the communities in the long run. So this is the resultant BT Soweto Empower Upgrade, where we work very closely with the community to optimize the site for residents. By building each single-story home over 2 floors, we could free up site area for a shared public open space and playground, a community center, which is currently under construction in the foreground in this image, and then the introduction of formal services via an internal road through the site. You can also start to see the access to renewable energy with the solar panels on the site. On the roofs. These will soon be rolled out across the full development. However, in addition to the generational asset, each formal structure provides a family with a permanent home environment that's safe from seasonal flooding and fires. And I think this is, the primary focus of the project, while addressing the additional onset challenges. So we currently, what prompted this solution and a series of questions which asked, the panelists, and why is the solution important? And I think to address that as simply as possible, we're currently living through a dramatic housing crisis where, formal housing is becoming increasingly exclusive as the backlog for homes built grows faster than the actual number of homes built, and all amidst the context of living on the fastest growing continent, fastest growing population on the continents on the planet. And this magnitude of the challenge only makes it more difficult to address, which results in fewer innovative solutions, and also, and as a result, the crisis continues. So we're providing housing that's safe and dignified, but fundamental to the Empower Upgrade project is the fact that it's easily scalable and completely replicable. So it started off at a community scale to a neighborhood context, and just within a 15-minute walk from the first site, there are 8 additional communities for about 2,500 residents who have reached out to us and requested we come in and develop their existing informal communities and upgrade their communities. But more than that, it's actually scalable to the city level, and after that, we aim to take it to a national level. And I think at a city level, this has been these communities have come as a request from the city, from Human Settlements and Informal Settlements Department, and for us to have these 2 scales, both from the residents from the ground up, from word of mouth and residents, as well as from the city, with all 15 of these sites being city-owned land, we take it as a dramatic proof of concept. I think we're currently at a crossroads in South Africa, currently at a crossroads in Cape Town, where it's so important to test new proposals and prototype and investigate alternative solutions. But more than that, I think it's important to take action and make a start towards overcoming these urgent humanitarian challenges. And I think this photograph, or these 2 photographs, quite aptly illustrate that, the before and after of our next phase, of the next development. It's called BBT Bukani, where we've proposed 69 units, a community facility, which includes a church, urban food garden, and as well as a public open space and a series of shops. But I think what's so important to acknowledge is that through these many challenges that we face, there's also remarkable opportunities for very significant and meaningful change. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. I think for giving us a tour. This is really exciting, and a tidbit from previous engagements with this initiative. The thing that floored me was the use of GIS models with community members to show how much land was actually available in the community site, and therefore when you reblock and offer the new buildings, there is suddenly an amazing amount of space for community centers, open space for parks and recreation. And I thought that was really exciting, and mirrors a lot of work that's been going on by many colleagues around that. You know, understand the site, support the people living in it to plan the site, and that's really exciting. So Ben, you've got two key and difficult questions. How is it financed? What is the approval process for these, which are in chat, and you can add there, and we can come back to those as the conversation goes on. To invite,
thank you.
Thanks, Ben. To invite Tuulika to join us and share some of your work with the Manya Design Studio, particularly your reflections on gender spaces. So please take it away.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tuilika Shaimemanya, and I'm the founder of Manya Design Studio. And as a former student myself from UCT, I'm very excited to be a speaker today because I used to actually listen to the Rise Africa sessions while I was completing my master's thesis. So this feels almost like a 360 moment for me. So I'm originally from Windhoek, Namibia, and I've lived in South Africa for about 5 years. And recently I transitioned back to Namibia, where I started a studio called Manya Design Studio. And we sort of work at the intersection of design policy and research, addressing critical issues in the city, but really focusing more on a gendered perspective. So I thought I'd start off today's discussion with more of a broader understanding of what led me here. And I think really it was in identifying different policy gaps as it relates to gender-friendly cities. And I think even from an African perspective, when it comes to mainstreaming gender in the urban planning discussion or conversation, it's not at the top of the priority. But at the same time, also, there's different interconnected issues as it relates to informal networks, public policy, and even governance. And those are some of the key challenges that I'm excited about addressing through Manya Design Studio. And I think also that when you look at, for example, even Windhoek, for example, we are a relatively small city. We're about 3 million people. That's about, you know, a small town in South Africa. But in terms of development, I think that we are in a good space in terms of, being at such a small scale, we are able to tackle some of these challenges, especially when it comes to the informal networks, which I want to show you a little bit of. So the first project that I wanted to show is a project that I worked on at GIZ Namibia. So I worked on this project as a consultant. And this was the Freedom Square project in a town called Gobabis, and which is located in the east of Namibia. So it's a rural town and less than 10,000 people. And this initially started off as a university project where students were tasked with designing a pavilion. And so the structure that you see at the top there in the middle, that's the pavilion that the students initially designed. So they put together some local materials. And what ended up happening was that they realized that the children are starting to play on this structure. And so they thought, okay, maybe we need to think of other ways to use this space where it could become more of like a communal space for the community. So the design process where I was involved in really was about reimagining this space where it could be used for community meetings, for children to play, designing additional trade spaces. And the community really became involved as well. So it was also very much a co-design process. And it was really about testing of ideas and also trying to get some of their inputs in terms of how they saw that space transforming. A lot of the women also brought up different ideas in terms of the types of structures that they wanted to have along the road, as well as wanting to also make provision for their children who would trade with them during the day. So it was including like these sort of nuances in terms of the actual design. And I also wanted to share what actually led me to this process. So I wanted to share a little bit about my master's thesis, where I was looking at an area called Horiyanka, which is an informal area in Windhoek. And I was investigating more of the street scale and really looking at different infrastructure along the street. And I was working together with female traders in Evelyn Street. And in this diagram here, you just see sort of what I was mapping at the time was the movement patterns. And through that, it allowed me to sort of understand how women sort of navigate through space. And oftentimes, a few things that came up was safety, accessibility, surveillance, and sometimes even just environmental aspects such as stormwater runoff, for example, would determine why someone would use a certain route as opposed to another route. And this allowed me to then develop this framework, which I like to call the Women Care Hub framework, which sort of looks at then broader ways of connecting spaces and creating an ecosystem. So I was looking at food, recreation, and transport. And I think even if you look at it from a street section, you can see that where the taxis were or where the transport node was, that was ultimately where A lot of women felt like that was more of a masculine zone. But then more of those intimate, smaller dwellings that were sort of sectioned further away from the street. That's where women felt safer, and also where they engaged more. And I think my solution that I really want to put forward today is really around this idea of the right to the city and women's right to the city. Also in terms of how we are developing our policies. I think even in Namibia, if I look at gender equality, for example, I think at a national level, all the policies are there, but yet I struggle to see that on a day-to-day basis as I'm navigating the city. So I think I will leave off with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Saskia Sassen, who says that urban planning is not gender neutral, but urban systems fail to respond to women's needs. And yeah, sort of a food for thought for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to Ulika, and I think we all resonate very much with this need for gender-focused design and planning, and this remark at the end. Absolutely, I think the intention can be there in a policy, but the way that things are designed are not taking it into account. And what I love about your imagery is that you're showing this immense amount of detail of these everyday actions that people are taking, and it reminds me of a presentation by the mayor of Bogota in Colombia, who also acknowledges this point of trip loading, that people will take multiple stops along their route, and so how do you understand that dynamic and then cater for that? And they've developed this idea of care blocks. So it'd be nice. You've left us with a high-level provocation around right to the city, and I'm going to come back and ask, well, how do we embed it into Namibia, into Namibia's urban planning or urban policy as well? How do we take that forward there? Thank you so much. So our final provocateur before we open up for broader discussion is Mohammed from Shagara. Please welcome and share your reflections.
Yes, thank you for the invitation, and have to say I'm very inspired by the solutions presented here, and I'm happy to actually share also my approach towards tackling what we call global environmental issues while also looking at social ones. So I'm Mohammed Abdul Samad from Shagara, and we at Shagara actually, as I mentioned, we always try to develop solutions that will actually address the global environmental issues, but also look and consider the local social challenges. So, and specifically to the solution I'm coming to talk about today, which is green roof classrooms, we are talking about the issue of crowded classrooms. And if you're not aware of the matter, unfortunately, in Egyptian public schools, classrooms that are designed to host 25 students, some of them 45 students, unfortunately end up hosting on average 78 students. And even in some cases, it's around 117 to 120 students. So what we try to do about this in Shagara is that we try to utilize the dead spaces in schools. And in this scenario, it's the school's rooftops. And we do this, what we do there is that we install a green roof on the rooftop, accompanied with a shaded wooden structure that allows the space to be actually utilized in educational activities. And when we design the space, we'll make sure to include two main sections. So the first one is a classroom space. This is a space where students get to start to have like real classroom, with real subjects like Arabic, mathematics, science. We also, when we design this space, we try to consider thermal comfort. So in Egypt, we have most of the school year take place in the winter. So we try to allow the sun to warm the space a little bit. But in the same time, also when it gets warmer, we want to make sure that shading is available in there. So we do like shading analysis and solar studies to locate the shaded structure in the right place. In addition to the classroom space, we also want to design a space, we want to include a space that we call a space for creativity and extracurricular activities, a space that will entice students and entice the users of the school to engage in creative activities to other extracurricular activities. Some schools use the space for art, for gardening, and even some of them use it as a theater. They do some plays there and some performances. So what is good about this project is it has like a very, very significant effect on the experience of students when it comes to teaching. So when you move students from a crowded classroom, a limited space, to an outdoor, an outdoor environment, what we call an outdoor classroom space filled with natural light, surrounded by vegetation, this really have a very good effect on their learning. It has a very positive effect on their learning. It increases their creativity. It helps the teacher as well. Gives give better teaching. The project also enables other extracurricular activities. In some schools, we do edible plants. So a student can learn about agriculture. As I mentioned, some schools also use the space for other playful things, like just like doing some performances. It's in some areas, actually, it's the only green space available to some communities. But also this project addresses environmental matters as well. Starting with how we design things in Shagara, the project is designed with circular philosophy. So from the beginning, it is designed to be repurposed. Everything's designed to be taken apart at the end of the project life cycle and reused elsewhere without creating any waste. Also, Shagara's proprietary green roof system, we're using our proprietary green roof system that actually achieves cost parity with conventional waterproofing and rooftop thermal insulation. We are using in 3 of the 4 layers of the green roof, we are using recycled polymers to reduce our water and carbon footprint. We also choose the vegetation in a way that it boosts urban pollinators and urban insects and the insects population, which in turn will boost urban biodiversity. The rooftop itself can be used as a carbon sink, even though it will not be significant, but still will do something. And additionally, plants and vegetation, they contribute to reducing the heat island effects and regulating the microclimate, which can really help a lot when it comes to adaptation in cities. As well, we can integrate renewables. Some projects, if the budget allow, we integrate renewable energies. And actually, we are looking forward in the future in Shagara to leverage the power of the green roof and vegetation by increasing the efficiency of solar panels, through the cooling effect. So vegetation will provide some cooling effects to the panels, so it will cool down and be more efficient, while also the solar panel can help keep more moisture in the plants. And also, most importantly, this is why we chose actually schools for this project, is that the project really contributes to increasing the awareness of the students regarding environmental matters. As other projects shared, we also use a participatory design approach. When designing the project, we involve the school students, we involve the administration in the design, and we involve them actually in the construction of the project. And later on, also Shagara will work with architectural and engineering students as well to involve them in the project and upcoming projects. And also, we are planning to work with vocational education students as well in the construction. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I mean, that's very exciting. And I hear the word integration coming through as you speak. Everything being very purposefully thought out. Solar panels that can produce energy while producing shade to keep moisture for vegetation, which is designed to support pollination and biodiversity. And the whole space is a learning area. So I think this speaks very much to what we're looking for in a lot of the work we're doing, is how do we achieve multiple outcomes with minimal resources. And I'm personally quite excited to hear about the end of life deconstruction process and how you thought about that. I think is very interesting. So thanks again for sharing. And thanks very much for the 5 provocations we've heard. I'd like to now invite Gertrude Rose and Itiboho to share initial reflections. What have you heard across the different solutions? How do you connect this to the urban as a space for experimentation? So let's start with Gertrude Rose and then to Itiboho.
Thank you, Paul. Somehow I thought Little would give it a go, and I was waiting to listen in, but it is quite exciting. And I want, yeah, I want to say good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are, East Africa, Southern Africa, the globe. It's a pleasure to be part of this great audience and to rise with Africa in terms of looking at our cities. So I want to congratulate the presenters for their very, very insightful presentations and showcases, which were quite refreshing and also thought-provoking. They were quite important provocations for the thought processes. And coming from a lens of working with cities and local governments, I felt that my aha moment was very useful solutions, which really feeds into our current trajectory that talks about youth-led solutions, you know, at cities and local governments, a promise for a sustainable future. So the youth are doing something. We are in safe hands. We just need to find out how to harness that resource and make use of it. The cases that have been given to us, the examples, for me, are quite useful in the sense that in a space for urban planning and design, we are looking to anchor the whole processes in community engagement. And all the 5 have ably pointed us in that direction, where everything from get-go, from planning to involvement to implementation, we've seen the community participate effectively. And I think this is a very important lesson for us who still advocate and push for a bottom-up planning process where the community is really in charge. And this is what decentralization is about, letting people be in charge of their daily livelihoods. These people are in charge of their spaces. And so I think these solutions are things we can really uptake into the urban planning processes. But also I like the whole idea of homegrown solutions. We've complained over years about top-down, people thinking for us, giving us things that do not work. So these kinds of innovations, the use of art technology, using resources around us, and the whole idea of allowing for experimentation. You give them a test and you allow for the demand to come through for more from the community, for me, speaks to the real agenda where we must be able to deliver services that are responsive to our communities in the cities going forward. So I think there are lots of lessons in that sense that we need to unpack in there. Then I like also the angle of when I look at all the solutions shared, they come from beyond being useful, they come from a private sector-led component. And we've been looking for that as cities and local governments. How do we marry and harness the resources in our jurisdictions, which involve the whole of society approach? And we need to bring on board the private sector. I like the sense of corporate social responsibility flagged in each one of them. We need a sense of giving back to the community, which shows that the private sector is ready in that sense to bring in that component we have as governments on board of tackling solutions. So definitely there's space for interaction in there when we are working with our urban planning processes as cities and local governments. Adaptation to the environment, looking at what is the community thinking about this solution. The shack, actually, I'm glad I was part of this session because I had the opportunity to visit Cape Town some time back, and I actually saw in real life that work. And in my mind, I was like, who's behind this? It can't be the city. Thank you so much. Is that Mohammed? Oh no, is it? Sorry, I may mess up the names a bit. It's Collenberg. Thank you for that innovation. Great idea, because cities struggle on how to redesign the informal settlements. And one of the biggest challenges is displacement, compensations, and all that comes with it. There are people who are born in those settlements and they're like, this is home, this is all we know. Coming and doing work within that same setting allows them for continuity. And this speaks to how this solution can be, used by cities. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say, Paul, and listeners and participants, is the solutions rest with us. We just need to find the bridge. We just need to make the cities and local government go out in the community, because the solutions are actually there. Provide the spaces and platforms for using those solutions, harnessing them, tapping them. But also, what I missed out perhaps is receiving a bit of feedback on how they've engaged and interacted with the cities on making these solutions possible for them, because that would speak to building the relations that are necessary to make this work for our communities. Apart from that, I think these are really lovely ideas, and it goes to show how rich we are as a society in Africa, how our communities actually know what they want, can actually lead us in the direction of delivering better services at cities. I'll stop there for now, and perhaps come back later.
Thanks, Gertrude Rose. Absolutely, and a piece I will pounce on is the how, and I think we'll dive deeper with each of our colleagues to unpack that more. And the point on demand-driven, how, I think we're sometimes scared to just lean into asking what people need and letting the demand lead us to what's appropriate. Diteboho, please.
Wow, thank you so much. And I'll borrow Gertrude's greetings to everyone joining us from all over the continent and beyond. Thank you so much for having us here as the South African Cities Network. Gertrude, I really don't know what to add to what you've already said, because it really has covered all the aspects of the projects that we've seen. So thanks so much. If I can just maybe tag on from your last comment around how maybe the cities are involved. And I liked your comment, which is really an indictment on our cities and local government. When you said this can't be an initiative of the city, when you saw the settlements in Khayelitsha. And it's really some lessons that we can draw from these examples as cities, as urban planners, as people who are tasked with the making of cities, to understand that we're not in this alone, that as professionals, as those tasked with these responsibilities in a city administration, that there's an opportunity for us to go out and learn from what's already happening, what people are already doing. And I liked one of the examples that, they showed that, let's watch and see how people use task space, how people already innovate in their own context and build on that, then bring on the design aspects, bring on the enabling environment to create those spaces and to enable people to be creative in how they solve the problems that they face. But also bringing human-centeredness. I liked that was a theme across all the projects, that they're really human-centered and really breaking the stereotypes around informality, around poverty, around inequality, and seeing and reimagining how can we work with what is already existing, and how do you give people a different perspective also of looking at themselves differently, and creating spaces that are aesthetically pleasing, that are environmentally responsive, that address the problems and challenges that they face in really creative ways. And I liked how all of them really focused on how do we adapt existing solutions in more creative and more design-orientated ways that are changing stereotypes, that are reimagining how things could be, and really addressing the issues and the challenges that people face. What also stood out for me is that for instance, the earth construction, in the rooftop, in the informal settlement upgrading, they're all very contextual. Each of them fits in appropriately in the environment that they're located. So it's not an eyesore, it's not something that you say, oh, this is imported from elsewhere. Everything is very contextual. It addresses the environmental constraints and values that are already there. It builds on them. Even the green belt rehabilitation is how do we address what's already a challenge or a problem in a way that enhances the environment and doesn't take away from it. And that's also important when we're looking at responding to the climate change impacts and building adaptation around the effects of climate change. Yeah, it's really been an amazing journey this morning through the different countries, the different cities that we visited through the eyes of the provocateurs. And so it's really been an inspirational session for that, but really lessons that we can learn around scalability and replicability across the different cities, and lessons for local governments to really embed themselves in community participation that is meaningful. I liked how Ben emphasized that it was both bottom up and top down in their approach. And that's important to get that balance and make sure that all the different approaches get to the effect that we want to see on the ground. Thanks so much, Paul. I'll pause there and get into the other discussions with the panelists. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tishabo. Can I invite all panelists to turn on your video if bandwidth is allowing? I'd like to open it up to hear from you. What struck you about each other's work? I don't want to be too prescriptive about a specific question, just some reactions would be great. But I think what emerges for me from both of these reflections and what you presented is this devil is in the details. And doing this work is incredibly detailed work. I think seeing each of the images that you've shared, there's a huge amount of technical background for how to do this. And so you presented a lot of the sort of what have you done, and I think a little bit of a teaser about how, but I'd like your reflection on one or two elements. How have you done certain things? So I think Radwa, how did you engage around cultural fit? Mohammed as well, I think the notion of the showing and the learning happening at once. You need to immerse people into the system so they can learn about it. So I'd like to just invite some open space for each of you to reflect. What have you seen from each other's presentations? And what are the specific hows that have enabled your work to proceed? Maybe we can go in reverse order this time. Mohammed, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, actually, one thing I really noticed among most of the solutions is the idea of the bottom-up design concept, and like designing a solution actually that feeds that tackles the needs of the target group. And actually, this is our experience in Shagora as well. Which, by the way, we started back in 2011, and we implemented our first school intervention. We call it Shagora at School, and by the way, Shagora actually means a tree in Arabic. We implemented the first one in 2013, and this bottom-up approach that we took really helps this project. It's still the same project, the same. It's a rooftop farm, the same rooftop farm that we installed in a public school in Egypt. By the way, public schools in Egypt, they have a very bad reputation when it comes to maintaining something. This specific school that we went during our survey, it had like some water leaking from one of the water sources in the bathroom, and nobody even cared about repairing it for 2 years while we were like taking all the approvals to implement the project. So this same school, they are still maintaining the rooftop farms that we installed for them in 2013 till now. And not only that, they also expanded the project. Without any intervention from Shagora, they made like an upcycling workshops with art class. In Egypt, we have art class. We also have agriculture classes. So they both work together, and they encourage the students to get their plastic bottles, and they upcycled it into hanging planters. Also, during the process, we wanted to plant as well trees outside the school, around the schools. Unfortunately, this area was just like used for rubbish. People were just like, it was accumulating rubbish, but we had to take another permission to do this. And they actually did it. They fundraised, the school administration, they fundraised, and they removed the rubbish, and they cleaned and they made a very beautiful garden in this area surrounding the school. So the idea is really involving the community and involving the target group. It really has a lot of benefits. It makes the people feel that this project is theirs and they maintain it and they also spread the ideas. And another thing we also focus on when it comes to environmental awareness, because it's really lacking here in Egypt. And as I mentioned earlier, because people have other social challenges. So the idea is to make them actually experience something. In our case, experience a clean environment, experience the vegetation. And why we are doing this, and also leading by example. This really helps spreads the idea. And by the way, in many of the schools, if you can go back to our social media page, you will see many of the students actually they start to replicate what we did with them in the school in their home. They will plant trees in their neighborhood. They will plant in their balconies edibles, herbs. And this is something that we are very proud of.
I really like that. Experience something, and I think that as a route for learning and how people will actually see, oh, this is actually leading to positive outcomes. That's fabulous. Tuilika?
I think for me, I was really inspired by everyone's presentation, and I think one thing that really stood out about everyone's presentation was this idea of experimentation. And I think even at different scales. So I think with the example in Kailicha, we saw how you can take a very simple idea at like a dwelling scale and scale that up to more of a community. I was also very much inspired by Wahabo's presentation on the green belt and how it also aims to provide an economic benefit to women in the community. And I think oftentimes that's an element that we forget, how it can also, increase or improve one's livelihood. So that for me was really something that stood out. But all in all, I think also just kind of not comparing, but viewing the different cities. So we've heard from Egypt, South Africa, Windhoek, and we see that most of these challenges are similar, but at the same time, I think the solutions are also similar. And I think people are at the center of those solutions. So, yeah.
Thanks. And if I can probe you on that question from earlier, the right to the city, what is your next step with the design studio? How are you going to get the gender lens properly embedded into the design practice and the urban planning practice? What is your aspiration there?
So I'm currently working on a policy brief. I did a fellowship last year in Italy at the European University Institute, and I'm focusing mainly on climate resilient infrastructure, but I'm using sort of the gender lens to sort of develop that narrative around putting gender at the top of the climate agenda. And simultaneously, I'm also currently conducting research on migration. And I think even within that, we see how climate change is also very much gendered and how women are more impacted by migration. Design studio, so it's about researching different topics and also trying to inform future policy. And hopefully through these publications that will stimulate or shake up some things in local government in Namibia.
Real. Really look forward to seeing them. Ben, your reflections on each other's inputs and some of the how and the barriers to getting this work going.
Yeah, so I think, thank you. I'm not going to repeat too much, but I mean, I really do echo the sentiments already expressed. I think the scales for me is so important, that you start off at such a small scale to address a much bigger problem, but you're looking at, you start off with a tangible impact at a human scale, or people orientated design. But I think for me, I mean, it's nice it's really inspiring to see the kind of the action, the unwavering action. I mean, I know that's what the the concept for this year's Rise is all about solutions and as well as failures. But I think it's such an important, there's that old French proverb of perfect is the enemy of good. And I think it's so important. You know, we can't strive to perfect something passively. We have to do it actively and kind of workshopping things. And I mean, Radwa initially mentioned that the first project wasn't the most beautiful, and I think that's such a perfect analogy, because it shouldn't be. In fact, if your first project is the most beautiful, there's not much room to grow, and you're not showing progress. And I mean, even Mohammed also mentioned that the rooftop wasn't a significant carbon sink, but again, it's you know, there's bound to be multiple iterations, and once there are rooftops across the city, that will be the significant carbon sink. And I think it's really an inspiring message to kind of to take home and to push this progress, push the development. I mean, I think it's not necessarily a solution, but I mean, just for some context, the way Urban Think Tank Empower started, there's an international company called Urban Think Tank, which kind of does what they call urban acupuncture, going around the world doing a project in Medellin, Cape Town, Bogota, Caracas, Beijing. And after doing a bit of work in South Africa, they just they realized, based on the need from the community and also the city, that there's a much deeper project here. And started off as a research investigation, and we realized that there was a lot more work to be done. And I think it's quite an important concept to keep on pushing, to keep on researching, investigating. I think practitioners don't experiment often enough, but it's so important to keep striving for those alternative and innovative solutions, doing things differently to how we've done it in the past. So I think that was really a standout for me. And of course, with that comes a series of challenges, and challenges are new and challenges we haven't yet experienced. But I think it's about being proactive in solving those challenges collectively. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Radwa, unfortunately, I think Wahabo has dropped off on the internet. So some reflections from you. What have you noticed? And I definitely love a reflection on your work on cultural fit and the questions around this sort of new old technology and how you've worked on that.
Yeah, well, thank you, of course, for bringing all this brilliant minds together. And it's always, I'm honored to be among the group selected. And it's, as I was saying, even about earth construction specific, it's very deep in our culture in the continent, not just in Egypt. So I feel connected to most of the projects mentioned, even if they're not purely talking about construction or earth materials. But I feel it's one of the gains of such events and such gatherings is that you connect people, like-minded people, and there are always a lot of collaborations and partnerships happening and building up through these gatherings. So I can see a lot of potential. I can see a lot of opportunities. We've already started like sharing contacts and connecting on LinkedIn, so we can really talk more afterwards. And yeah, I just felt home. I felt I could relate to some of. I mean, we've mentioned the topic related to failures as well, but maybe we didn't get the chance to talk about this. Maybe this needs another talk or another gathering to talk about the things we've learned throughout our journey. And I'm sure we will all can relate to some of like the disappointments we had, the frustration we had. I'm sure they're not very far. The experiences we've all had. Working with a community has its own like bright side, and also another side, a challenging side. Working on environmental issues has also these two sides as well. So yeah, maybe we need another 5 minutes to share the other side of the success story. But other than that, yeah, it was very encouraging for me. Honestly, personally, it came in the right time because like I'm experiencing some of those low times at the moment. So seeing a lot of these examples and seeing everyone is like fighting a battle on their own, just like, yeah, brought a positive note to the end of the week here. So yeah, again, thank you. And I'm very optimistic that, yeah, a lot of conversations will open afterwards. This is not the end of it.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, you're trying hard to close us out of the session with a few more minutes to go. So I do want to hear a further reflection as well. Disappointment is part of that journey, you know, and I think what certainly that validation from being in the space here, we all need these spaces where we can say, I like what you're doing. I see this element you didn't even notice. That's amazing about this piece of work. So I think that encouragement, you know, people look at experiments and solutions as if they came from this genius moment and everything has been up, up, up. But of course, we know that that's not the case. You've invited yourself to tomorrow's session, and Fumi would be delighted to hear some of your reflections on failure and what you've learned from that, and how you've internalized that and keep the despair at bay when things aren't working. So I would like to do a closing round, maybe just to pick up from Wahabo's sort of point from the green belt. I'm sorry he's not here to add his voice. The piece on bringing associations together struck me as very powerful, and we had from another colleague in Antananarivo a while back this idea of policy as practice and partnership as their policy. And so where they don't have resources, they go and engage with a whole set of other colleagues to do that reinforcing. And I think that's come as a thread for me throughout. Richard has added a question into the chat, which maybe can be our closing sort of reflection. How have these been received by local authorities? So maybe just a quick word. What are you doing next? How are you taking these forward as your closing reflection? And then I'd like to hand to Diteboho and Gertrude Rose to close us off for the session. Maybe we do another round from Mohammed through. So a closing point from you, Mohammed, on how you're taking this forward.
Actually, one thing actually I would love to actually I would love it will happen if we can actually find a way for all of us to keep the connection going. You know, I think all of us, I would say, struggle to find a way to finance our projects. You know, if we can come up, if like we can constantly, for example, meet and we can, share our experiences with that and maybe come up with new ideas. You know, how can we finance our projects? I was just thinking about, the upcoming, not upcoming, currently with NFTs, just something quite innovative, like how can you finance something like these projects, which are beneficial for the environment, for the community and the environment. In Egypt, in Shagara, we relied on the private sector. We do it like the shared value projects. But, in bad times, the funding really dries up. But, if we can, come up with, brainstorm together and with other people in the community on how we can actually finance these projects, to keep it more sustainable. So I think it's very important, if we can keep the connection, because we are all having like similar goals, which is benefiting the local community and benefiting the environment. So if we can keep the connection we have, it will be really great.
Fabulous. You've got a call to action, and I think some very easy steps to keep the conversation going. Thanks, Mohammed. Ben? Oh, no, Tualika?
Maybe just to respond to Mohammed, I think that's a really excellent idea. I think a lot of times one has all these crazy innovative solutions, but oftentimes you can't really, it doesn't hit the ground because of a lack of finances. So I'm definitely more than willing and eager to also create our own sort of informal network where we can share ideas or even just collaborate in the future. And on a more personal note, I'm really in the next months, I will probably be focused more on research and policy analysis. So the topics I mentioned earlier, climate resilience, migration, gendered space, those are sort of the key thematic areas and topics. And if anyone wants to follow along my journey, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, and you will be able to tag along with me on that journey.
Ben?
So also I want to also just start off by, I mean, you mentioned the kind of collaboration between city and private, and I think these public-private partnerships are so essential. I think it's come to a point. I mean, I'm speaking from the Cape Town context, from the Southern African context, but I think these challenges are universal in that there's so much strain on local and state governments, and but at the same time, so much potential and so much resources within the government, but they don't quite have the agility of the private sector to instigate and to kind of fully utilize that potential. In the city of Cape Town, I mean, it was recently announced that the city has announced by an NGO, by Ndufunu Ukwazi, that the city has about 105 square kilometers of underutilized sites within the city, and that's the size of Barcelona, but without the capacity or capability, or there's limitations in what they can do with it. And I think it takes the connection, it takes that instigation to truly utilize it, and not even just for the ideas, but for funding especially. And I mean, I love Mohammed's point. I think we should definitely keep this going. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges as a nonprofit, as an NGO, is to kind of keep the wheels turning, to keep the pipeline when you are coming up against these constant challenges that Radwa mentioned, whether it's challenges with local authorities, or sluggish structures or institutions, or challenges with the community. I mean, everything takes time, and everything takes a different amount of time, and you're working on a very finite balance of innovation and technology, and balancing community expectations and maintaining trust versus the statutory processes, or these, and everything has to work out in a similar timeline, and it's a knife's edge. But to be able to work together and both financing through with the city, or making projects happen with the city, as well as financing with each other, I think unlocks a series of new opportunities. And even going to investors for donation in Cape Town, we limited just based on our scale to kind of mid-scale investors. Nothing like a seed fund, not more than a seed funding, but less than a Bill and Melinda Gates. But to go in, and of course the impact's also limited, but to go collaboratively and to do these 6 projects around Africa, to apply for a grant to test out projects with where we really maximize the impact and reach so many more people and collaborate the learnings, I think there's so much potential and so much opportunity in that. So I'm very excited at that thought. Thank you,
Ben. Radwa, closing reflection from you. What are you taking forward from this?
Yes, absolutely. So, I don't have much to add to what everyone has said, but referring also to the question that was asked about how these solutions have been received by local authorities. Yeah, we've had several challenges related to permits, related to believing what we're offering, related to collaborating in order to get like infrastructure and to keep these projects up and running. So yes, it hasn't been an easy way to tackle this with local authorities, as many of the entities we have acknowledged, actually they're very rigid. They only believe in the things that they have known about. They don't. It doesn't come very easy that they would adopt new ideas. So yes, it wasn't easy. It took us a couple of years and a couple of projects on the ground until they believe that what we're offering is viable, what we're offering is something solid and not just ideas. So yes, it hasn't been easy. And reflecting also on what everyone has been saying, I think it's interesting to start this conversation, because some of us, I think we have different models. Even like our company, it's a limited liability company, so we are a private sector, so we fund or we run the company differently. So maybe starting a conversation from from different models, it can really inspire someone else to change the way of how they fund their projects or how they run their company or their NGO. And yes, if we're working in the same continent, so probably most of the grants or awards or fellowships targets this continent, so we can also share whatever resources we have. Maybe someone has been on a program and the other could fit and they can nominate them. I think, yeah, this is part of the gains of why we should keep this conversation up and running.
Thanks so much. So internal calls in this call for internal collaboration. So I look forward to seeing what emerges from these conversations. Kevin has thrown a million links into your chat to excite you about the rest of the potential sessions. From my side, I hope you will join us for the Africa Day Storm on Saturday, and also the what am I saying? Africa Day session, and please do fill out a survey about the session and the festival. So our esteemed discussants, I'd like to hand over to you to close us out. What have you heard that you want to take forward? What should people who've joined us in this conversation take forward? And let's start with Titiboho and then Gertrude Rose.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you so much to all the participants. Hope, inspiration, action. That's what I would like our participants and everybody who's been listening in to take forward from this session. Really hopeful for the future of our cities, really inspired by seeing what is possible, by seeing what is possible within the confines of resources, rigidity, scale, everything that our participants, our panelists really have shown. And action, that we can do something within our little corners or big corners and influence change in scalable ways, in replicable ways, and show what is possible. Thanks. That's it, Paul, for me.
Thanks, Titiboho.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, going forward, my I think takeaway is that partnerships remain crucial and very important. And this is what we must nurture along the way. But I also wanted to acknowledge that you're not alone, the innovators, you're not alone, because I think today where cities and local governments are at, we do acknowledge that innovation requires investment. And if we're to grow any new ideas, and there are opportunities out there. For example, right now on issues around climate change, we have the Youth Climate Fund. Get in touch with your cities and make sure that they kind of bring you on board, make your case, and perhaps that could be a good starter. But also for the associations who are in this room, Litevoho, myself, this is the beginning for us to take and be ambassadors. Just like the cases show that these youth are champions, let us be the champions who take the message to the local governments that you're not alone, that you have people in your community doing things that you need to get done. So your hands are not tied. You've got many hands out there. Harness them, bring them on board, and let us build a culture of peer learning and exchange. And perhaps through that, we can get through to the solutions that we seek to improve our urban planning processes. So that's my take home. And I look forward to remaining in touch with the youth, of course, ICLEI, doing our work together, South African Cities Network. Let us champion. These are innovations that are a must take home.
Thank you, everyone, for the conversation today. While I want all of us to stay in the realm of solutions only, failures also, I must tease something to excite and inspire you about these conversations. You guys have a year to come and present your new coalition together, because next year, I hope you're ready, Rise Africa will take place in person. So I just want to tease this. We're really excited. And we're going to work hard to make sure that we have real resources to bring the community together then and there. The theme and dates will be announced as part of our Africa Day Storm on Saturday, so keep tuned. But we're really excited. So thank you very much for being part of today's conversation. We hope that you will take forward these ideas, and I have no doubts that our provocateurs this morning, we're going to see the fruits of your conversation emerge too. So thank you, everybody. Stay well and enjoy the rest of the festival.